Hey, I'm Roland with Mobile Geeks, and this is our quick review of the Galaxy Tab S10.5. So that's a new premium tablet from Samsung, running at 2560 by 1440 pixels. It's a Super AMOLED panel using an RGB stripe screen, so no Pantile matrix on here. You get a higher quality on the display than on the Galaxy Tab S8.4 that has the same resolution but a Pantile structure since it's a smaller screen. We're talking about a Samsung Exynos 5420 SoC in here, so that's an octa-core based on 4 ARM Cortex-A7 and 4 ARM Cortex-A15 cores running at speeds of up to 1.3, that's the Cortex-A7, and 1.9 gigahertz on the A15 cores. It is a pretty powerful CPU, but it can't really keep up with the Samsung, but we'll talk about that later. Other than that, we're talking about a weight of just 465 grams and a depth of just 6.6 millimeters. So let's just jump right into it. Design-wise, the Galaxy Tab S10.5 isn't departing too much from Samsung's earlier models, so it's still a plastic build, as you can see from the back. So they have this pimpled design that you know from the Galaxy S5, for example. And it's fully made out of plastic, no metallic finish on here. And it is super thin, so that's the difference. It's just 6.6 millimeters deep, which is less than an iPad Air, and it's also a bit lighter than an iPad Air. So that's basically the same league they're playing in with this device. It is a super high-end device, or that's at least where they're positioning it and gunning for the iPad Air. Also, pricing is pretty much the same. As you can see, we're talking about pretty thin bezels on the sides right here, and even on the top, and on the bottom, you also have pretty thin bezels. The screen, again, 10.5 inches, is pretty decent. It has good viewing angles and stuff, so that's definitely nice. The whole thing is made to look really blingy and really high-end, so that's why they chose this gold borders on here on this white model. There's also a bronze black or blonde bronze gray version that has, or is it brown? I don't know. It's basically made to look very stylish and high-end. It's not the most simple design, so you really have to you have to grow to it to like it in the end. On the back, you have the camera and stuff, but again, this pimpled design right here, I don't know if you can really see this on the screen. I like the cover quite a bit because it doesn't attract fingerprints very much, but there is a bit of a slipperiness to it, so it feels kind of cheap. Maybe some people won't like it since maybe coming from an iPad, you will be disappointed in the build quality on this, but other than that, it feels pretty sturdy. It doesn't have a stylus or anything, so it's just a basic tablet function-wise, but it is one of the better ones at that. Let's talk about the display quickly. We have a 10.5-inch screen, 2560 by 1440, as I said. It is not the brightest screen, so we measured a brightness of, I think, 280 to 300 candela on this. And well, you can definitely read it outside, no problems with that because the brightness is pretty much enough. Samsung does some funny stuff with the device itself, so what they're doing is basically they're oversaturating the colors on the device to make colors really pop. Since it's a Super AMOLED screen, the display quality is decent already, so they're pushing it a bit further, even using those automatic color settings. So you might want to turn these off and just use the basic setting. You'll definitely have a good time watching movies and other things on here. Also, the stripe structure of the display itself makes quality really, really good. So everything looks super crisp. I mean, if you look at the fonts on here, we'll see if the camera can actually get this right. There's no pixelation or whatever going on right here. So that's definitely one of the better screens on here. And in my opinion, it's actually the best screen that you can get on a tablet right now, since again, it has this RGB stripe structure, and it uses a Super AMOLED panel that does pretty good at sticking to the real colors if you turn off the oversaturating modes that Samsung is using on this device. Performance-wise, it is on the high side, so let's just switch to the settings, to the overview in CPU-Z right here. So there we have it, 4 cores, Cortex-A15 and Cortex-A7, running at 1.3 or 1.9 gigahertz, depending on how hardly you text the device. In benchmarks, you will end up scoring pretty high on this. So for example, in Antutu right here, we're getting a pretty good 35,000 points. So that makes you really go up to the higher end. In the end, you will end up just between the S5 and the HTC One M8, for example, in Antutu. But other than that, there are some issues running that Mali T628 that's integrated into the Samsung chip right here. So on the graphics side of things, it can't really keep up with devices or chips like, for example, the Snapdragon 801 or Snapdragon 805 or even Snapdragon 800 from last generation's high-end tablets. So that's why this device definitely has some minor issues. I haven't even, I've did some runs right here. So in the end, you'll end up with just under 13,000 points in Ice Storm Unlimited 3D Mark or 8,500 points in Ice Storm Extreme. So gaming-wise, you shouldn't have any problems playing games on this, since the device is pretty good able to keep up with the high resolution using that chip that's integrated right here. But if you are super into gaming and you really want a high experience, you might want to choose a device running a Snapdragon. Other than that, games look really stunning on this because, again, it is using that awesome chip or that awesome SuperAMOLED screen that Samsung builds itself. The Samsung Galaxy Tab S10.5 has an 8 megapixel camera integrated on the back that even has a flashlight. So you can use the flash to lighten up darker scenes. I'm just going to quickly do a shot of my table right here for you so you can see the flash at work. And it does a pretty good job of taking pictures. I mean, there's a bunch of issues that you will experience just as you would on any other device running a smartphone camera. There's a bunch of, there's a bit of noise going on when the scene gets darker. And in this case, on this device, you also will experience the fact that the camera isn't the fastest to focus. So if you look at this circle in the middle right there, and I'm just going to move it up and down again, it might take 1 or 2 seconds to get the camera to focus. But if it's it is pretty accurate and it is easily focusing pretty quickly, but not the fastest as for example, on the LG G3 or other smartphones where the cameras are tuned to be even faster in this case. So camera quality is pretty nice on the Galaxy Tab S10.5, but again, same issues as on any other smartphone or tablet with darker scenes, for example. The battery life on the Galaxy Tab S10.5 is pretty decent. It has a huge 7900 milliamp hour battery integrated that you can't remove. Again, it's just a 6.6 millimeters thick tablet, so that's to be expected. But it does really give you quite a decent runtime. So you will get up to 14 hours of continuous use, having the screen on all the time and playing video. We managed to score just around 12 hours. In daily life, you will definitely get through the day on this device. Shouldn't be any problem at that. You won't be using this device constantly, so in the end, you'll end up, like me in this case, with a runtime of more than 4 days. That has been including just a half an hour of on-screen time, just checking for mails and stuff. So I've been using this for a while, and it will definitely last a week or something on standby, so that's no problem at all. Also when playing games, you will see that the battery life drops to just around 5 hours when playing games at full resolution, and having the screen at its highest brightness, you will score 5 hours at maximum, but that's also to be expected when using the device with a lot of apps and playing games and putting a lot of pressure on the CPU right here. Samsung has integrated 2 speakers on both sides of the device, so they're putting out their sound to the sides, pretty thin. Again, the device is really thin, so you will end up with a bit of a tinny sound. And I've just started 3D Mark right here, and I'll turn up the sound so you can hear what that sounds like. This is recorded using a Zoom H4 audio recorder, so the sound should be pretty true to life, although it's a bit further away from the device. Let's just listen for a second. So as you could hear right there, the sound is pretty tinny, but it's pretty clear. It doesn't really crackle or anything when I turn it up to the maximum. So sound is pretty much all right. When watching movies, you might want to plug in some headphones because the high tones are what this device puts out mostly. There's pretty much no bass because there's no room for resonance on the Galaxy Tab S10.5. It's just too thin to actually put out some bass or any kind of bass or even lower mid-tones on this. Samsung has again integrated their fingerprint reader that has now become a trademark feature of their high-end device. So you'll end up setting this up like on the Galaxy S5, for example. I'll have to swipe here for 8 times to register. I'm just going to quickly do this and hope it works. In this case, it actually went through. I'm just going to set my password right here. And once you've set it all up, you can lock the device and unlock it using your finger. So, but as you can see, it is not the most accurate device in this case. So Samsung definitely has to do a bit of work on their fingerprint reader since it doesn't really work well in everyday life. You'll probably deactivate this after a couple of hours of usage because you'll soon get annoyed by the fact that you can't swipe from the left or right or whatever. You'll always have to be really accurate hitting the device on the front right there, and to really make it work in this case, it's pretty much a surprise that it actually works for me right now. Other than that, we have integrated a infrared blaster up here, so you can use the device for controlling your media devices, for example, your TV or your stereo. Also, it doesn't always work. It's not the most powerful infrared blaster up there, so you might want to stick to using your standard remote, but it's a nice feature and nice to have. Samsung combines this with their own software and yeah, works pretty nicely, but not as accurate or not as reliable as you would expect from a standard remote. Software-wise, the Galaxy Tab S10.5 sticks to Samsung's philosophy of combining the up-to-date Android version, in this case Android 4.4.2 KitKat, with their own TouchWiz UI, which is a pretty good-looking UI nowadays if you can deal with those bright colors. It is also pretty much a feature overload is still existent, but they have definitely reduced this toward or compared to earlier models or earlier generations of their tablets and smartphones. So they have done a good job of kicking out unused or unnecessary features, but it's still, there's a ton of features in here that you will have to deal with, and you can pretty much set everything up the way you want. What you can't change is this. So this is just a quick briefing screen or their magazine UI or whatever you want to call it. So you can set up work stuff. A bunch of calendar features are in here. You can also have the remote available over there. Sports features, sports news, art and culture news, and general news. And if you swipe even further to the left, you will end up with a bit of an office environment where you have direct access to Hancom Office, which is Samsung's homemade office environment. There's your email accounts right there and calendar stuff. So a bit of an unnecessary add-on, but it's always nice to have those features if you want a full package software-wise. So TouchWiz on the Galaxy Tab S10.5 has definitely improved, but it still has some minor performance issues. That's another thing that has to be criticized on this device. So if you go into, for example, the browser, you will notice that the device isn't really able to keep up with the high resolution, or if you're using a bunch of software stuff on here at once, you will always end up with a bit of a stutter, so it can't really keep up with the device or with performance. There's always a bunch of micro bumps in the UI usage. What's pretty nice though is the fact that Samsung has integrated their own multitasking stuff. So it's again their multi-window stuff. So you can just pull out apps right here and dock them to the UI. And Right now it tells me I can choose another app, and I will just do that right now and pull out the phone menu, for example, and just throw that in here. So you'll combine the dialer with a bunch of other apps in this case, and you can scroll through these just the way you want. You can size it differently, and you can deactivate it easily. So that's also been improved a bit, and it works really nicely even on this tablet in this case. So multi-windowing is definitely a pleasure and always a nice feature to have on the Galaxy device range. Overall, the Galaxy Tab S10.5 is definitely an awesome tablet, at least when you're talking about the 10 point something inch range. It has one of the highest resolutions available, but again, it's not alone on the market with this resolution, since the Nexus 10, for example, has always had a similar resolution. The brightness on the screen is decent. The color reproduction is awesome if you turn off all Samsung's color improvement stuff. That doesn't really work that well, considering the fact that you might want a realistic realistic impression from the device, but not that overblown, super saturated color stuff that Samsung's software does there. So definitely one of the best screens, if not even the best screen on a tablet right now, or a 10-inch tablet in this case. Performance-wise, we're on the high side, not the highest scoring SoC is in here, but still doing a good job scoring those 35,000 points in Antutu. So performance-wise, you're also pretty good. There's 3 gigs of RAM in this case, which should definitely be enough for multitasking. And we have 16 gigs of onboard flash storage that can be easily extended through the micro SD card slot, which sits on this side of the device right there. That's a SIM card slot. Micro USB port for connecting to your computer. So that's not a USB 3.0 port as on the Galaxy S5, for example, but it will definitely be okay. Having this 8 megapixel camera on the back right here, including its flash. The flash itself is pretty unique on tablets. The 8 megapixel camera is pretty good. It does a good job, and it's definitely better than most tablet cameras. The design, you have to really grow used to this, because this pimpled cover on the back isn't everybody's liking, but it does feel pretty good. It also feels pretty premium, although it's still just plastic. So build quality seems alright too. There's no squeaking or whatever. It doesn't really bend. It just bends a bit because it's all plastic, and you also want it to bend, otherwise it might even break. So that's not going to happen on this. Also, having this fingerprint reader down here is pretty useless, but Samsung hopefully will improve on this using software updates or in the next generation of tablets from their company. What's also pretty nice is to have the hardware buttons if you really like them. When switching to landscape mode, from landscape mode to portrait mode, also the buttons shift, so that might get a bit annoying when you're used to on-screen buttons. Other than that, the battery life also seems pretty much alright. It could be a bit longer, but it's still definitely totally fine, staying up there with the iPads and other tablets. So also in this case, doing a pretty good job. If you really want to pay those 450 to 490, whatever, 500 bucks on the Galaxy Tab S10.5, depends on your budget and the fact if you really want to pay that much money for a tablet. And there's a bunch of reasons to do it, because the screen is pretty awesome, performance is pretty much alright, and it is pretty much the thinnest 10.1 inch or 10.5 inch tablet on the market right now, and it's also pretty much the lightest, since it's even lighter than the iPad Air. So I was rolling with Mobile Geeks, checking out the Galaxy Tab S10.5 in the LTE version that, I forgot to mention that, has good reception, and you can even make phone calls with this. And yeah, if you like what we do on our channel, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and follow us on Google+, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter. And we'll see you later.